Okay, everybody, welcome to the Jewish Study Center. This is the second session, session number 2 of the class Pirkei Avos, Pathways to Life. And Rabbi Edelstein will take over in about 2 minutes, but let me just have a couple technical announcements again. As most of you may see, we are recording this. When the recording is ready, I will post it and send an email to everyone who's registered, so you can see the recording. Also, there is a live transcript available. So those of you who have hard of hearing can use, or if you, otherwise, you can still use the live transcript. Just go and click on the transcript. You should be able to access it. When I do when I post the recording, I will also post the transcript so you can actually read what the rabbi is saying. Okay, again, I'm Jerry Garfinkel. I am the treasurer of the Jewish Study Center, and I'd like to tell you that we have free classes, but we do have expenses, and so we are appreciative of any donations that you make to us. If you go onto our website and click on donate, you can then get a form and you can donate via your credit card or PayPal, or send us a check, and the address will be given to you. Everyone is going to be muted, but we do want questions and comments, so write your questions and comments in the chat box. Later in the program, there will be breakout rooms we'll be using, and you'll be put into a breakout room for a few minutes. The rabbi will explain about that as we go along. So that's all, and I think that's about it. I'll just say one more thing. Our Vice President, Mindy Reiser, is actually with me today watching this. She's had a little bit of an accident, so I had to take her back from the hospital. So Rabbi, please take over.
Thank you, Jerry, very much. Thank you for hosting this. You said Mindy is out of the hospital or still in the hospital?
No. I'm here. I'm with Jerry. I'm sitting right next to him.
Oh, no, right. Okay. I didn't see you on the screen. I'm sorry, Mindy. Well,
I picked her up from the hospital. There was no time to bring her to her house, so I put her over here, so she's watching the program from here. Then afterwards, I'll take her to her place.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, Mindy, continued strength and refuah shlema. You should have a full, complete recovery. And I know you were alluding in the pre-live session, you were telling us that you had learned some beautiful things already in your experience. I mean, not the obviously difficult to have to go through health concerns, but Jewish chaplaincy. You can share with us another time the lessons you learned. I'd love to hear. But welcome everybody. My name is Rabbi Yosef Edelstein. They call me Rabbi E. On campus, I work mostly with college students as part of an organization called MEOR, National Jewish Outreach Education Organization, on about 20 campuses nationwide. I work mostly at GW, but I also interact with students at Georgetown and AU a little bit. I've been here for my 20th year, and I'm not going to give you a whole life story or recap last time completely, but I did want to introduce myself for those who weren't here last time. I live in Silver Spring with my wife and 4 children. One of my daughters is married. She lives in Baltimore. And it's really delightful to have this opportunity to study with you together. I said this last week, or maybe I said it to the board. I'll say it again. It's a great break. Don't tell those college students. We love them dearly, but it's really nice to have a break from them and to have more seasoned participants. And just to, in my life as a Jewish educator, I'll try to speak more slowly. Sorry, I was told that I do speak. They did call me motor mouth as a kid. They did. But I'll try to, and I lived in Savannah, Georgia, where they could not understand what I was saying. the speed, but I'll try to go slowly. But I'm very grateful at this opportunity to get back to some of the adult learning that I used to do a lot more before I kind of focused on college campuses. And I do want to give a special shout out to Amy Schwartz, who's on the board of the Jewish Study Center, an old friend from Harvard class of '84. And it's been delightful reconnecting with her in the last few years. And it's because of her that I knew about the Jewish Study Center and had high regard for it, and even gave a class, I think, some 18 or 19 years ago for it. But it was due to Amy that well, you can either thank Amy or blame Amy after you judge Amy. You can judge Amy after our class. But thank you, Amy, for bringing me on board. Okay, everyone can hear me okay? Please tell me. Don't be shy. Jewish people are never shy about making their needs known. So tell me if I'm too loud, too soft, or whatever.
You sound right
Okay.
to me, at least.
I sound what? Okay. And also the technical, if there are technical difficulties, I hope there won't be. God willing, there won't be. Thank you, Amy. Okay, great. So this is part 2 of a series on Pirkei Avot, often translated as Ethics of the Fathers or Chapters of the Fathers. I'm not going to rehash last week's introduction, but just a very quick few things. Most of you probably are very familiar. I hope I'm not going slow motion. I don't know why that's happening, but okay. Nothing's perfect in this world. Many of you are probably familiar with this famous work. It's one of the most well-known Jewish ethical works. It's part of the oral law, the Mishna, right? It's one book in the written down in outline form version of what was called the oral law. The Mishnah, later the Talmud, was an elaboration of the Mishnah. But Pirkei Avot, or Avot, is one tractate of the Mishnah, of the oral law. But it's unique and celebrated because it focuses on not mitzvot. Every other tractate of Mishnah details exhaustively, although not as exhaustive as the Talmud, which is the elaboration of the Mishnah. But, right, the Mishnah is actually quite abbreviated. But every other book of the oral law of Mishnah deals with various commands from the Torah, of the 10 Commandments. But the only exception to that is this beautiful book we're studying now, which is very related to the mitzvot, the commandments of the Torah. But more accurately, it focuses on, and this really, it focuses on, most would summarize it as midot. The singular word in Hebrew, midah, you probably know, midah means literally a measurement, to measure, but it means attributes, character traits we all have. We're all a bundle of different midot, attributes. And this tractate, Avot, this book, focuses on midot. There are other ways of describing it. You could say it focuses on another phrase called derech eretz, which literally means the way of the land, but in rabbinical literature, that means kind of proper behavior, not etiquette, not like outward etiquette, but proper ways to act. It's also called a book of, or a focus on, another word, I'm not trying to, musar. Musar means, roughly defined, character self-development, which is always and part and parcel of all of the Torah literature. But this book of Avot focuses exclusively on character development, traits and attributes, and so on. And that's one reason it's the most popular, because even if someone is not as curious at the moment about the details of which blessings to make on food, that's the first tractate of Mishnah, or, the kinds of bird offerings that were brought in the temple of old in Jerusalem, that's one category, that's one book of Mishnah. So, and they're wonderfully interesting tractates. But more universal probably is the lessons of Avot. Not proper, they are more universal. They're more, and in fact, the word Avot doesn't only mean fathers. And one reason it's called that is because the statements of the great rabbis in the book are our spiritual fathers. They are our spiritual fathers. But the word avot also means general principles. And that's used in halachic Talmudic terminology. General principles of law or categories are avot. So in other words, it's another way of saying this tractate in some way is the foundation of every other tractate in the Mishna. In a certain way, that's not untrue, because these are general ways of life that, and here's what I want to say before we actually launch into learning again directly. I don't believe this is a lecture class. I hope it's not. It might turn out that way. I don't want it to be. But the relationship, and I mentioned this briefly last time, but I want to speak it out just a second more because I think it makes our study of this tractate more meaningful. By and large, among the 613 commandments in the written Torah, the 5 books of Moses, there's not those commandments, by and large, having good character traits or avoiding negative character traits are not part of the 613 mitzvot directly. Now, if I sound a little tentative, it's because there are a couple of commandments that are enumerated among the 613, which do kind of focus on it. Maybe we'll talk about it later. Not important, but let me be very specific and clear. Wow. I see my good friends are frozen. I hope, Jerry, can everyone see me and hear me okay? Because I'm seeing frozen people.
I can see you and hear you okay.
Okay, fantastic. As long as you guys can see me and hear me well. Let me be very specific and not vague, okay? No commandment in the Torah avoid anger and rage, okay? But I think, first of all, we'll acknowledge that in and of itself, it's a very negative trait. It does tremendous damage to our blood vessels, our human beings, to property sometimes if the window pane takes the brunt of our rage. So there's no direct commandment among the 613, don't get angry or curb your temper, okay? But it's a foundation of all the other mitzvot, or a lot of the other mitzvot. Meaning, if you're not working on or trying to master, or don't worry, I haven't mastered yet, if you're not working on control of anger, well, something, you're going to violate a lot of the 613 commandments, because not bearing a grudge, not taking revenge, not speaking gossip, not damaging your neighbor's ox or house or car, those are all commandments in the Torah, right? But if you have no control of your rage, then you're going to violate the Torah. So that's a great example. Or another one, laziness. Again, by the way, anger and laziness, we all battle these things. They're part of the human condition, but like to greater or lesser extent in each one of us. But if someone's not working on curbing their tendency, which is natural, to laziness, so to speak, atzlut, well, then you're not going to get up to pray in the morning or whatever. So all I'm saying is that even though they're not explicitly, there's no commandment, don't be lazy. But that's not an oversight of the Torah. The midot are the foundation of everything else. And the great sages in our tradition, many of them quite explicitly say that. They even use the language of the following, that midot, attributes, are a more severe issue than the mitzvot. Now, the mitzvot are very serious, meaning traditionally, keep all my commandments, be holy unto your God. That's an important thing. Every mitzvah is a way of connecting to God, to ourselves. But I'm really quoting a great Rabbi Chaim Vital, a great sage in the Tzfat in the 1600s. But he said, he's not the only one, he said, the midot are more severe than the mitzvot. You have to work harder. You have to be more careful, more meticulous about elevating your positive midot and curbing your negative midot more than the mitzvot. Well, how could that be? Because they're the foundation of the mitzvot, right? That's right. Like we said, I think you got the idea. So it's a beautiful way to think of it. So, yeah. So that's why this is a tremendously important tractate. And by the way, the Torah needs mitzvot and midot. We need to have midot to carry out the mitzvot. Now, the only thing, and then we'll stop if there's any questions about that, and then we'll actually go back into Pirkei Avos. But I alluded before to the fact that there are a few commandments. I'll mention one because I think it's a beautiful commandment. I think it's fair to say the commandment of the 613 Taryag mitzvot that really does kind of, well, not kind of, it does focus on a kind of character development, and that's what's called v'halachta b'drachav. You shall walk in God's ways. And it's found several times in the Torah, mostly I think in the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, but in any case, the oral understanding in our tradition of what does it mean, walk in God's ways? It means to be elevating your character traits. Just like God is long-suffering with humanity, we should be long-suffering with humanity. Just like God is a giver, we should be a giver. So even though I said by and large, there are not commandments that say adopt this trait or don't adopt this trait, walking in God's ways is one of the commandments that really is part of the story of developing good character traits, at least in the sense of, right, developing those especially benevolent, compassionate traits of patience and forbearance, because that is the focus, and doing kindness. Okay, does that make sense? Anyway, that was a little, and I want to, one other point, then I'll pause. I think we all know, and this is what Rav Chaim Vital meant, I'm sure, that great sage. If we're missing a mitzvah, no one's perfect. None of us is perfect. By the way, I think we all know the mitzvot collectively are for the whole Jewish people. No one of us individually can do 613 mitzvot. And many we can't do nowadays at all in the absence of a temple or whatever. So that number is not like, oh no, it's all upon me. It's upon all of us collectively, men, women, children, everybody throughout. Well, actually, children are not obligated to mitzvot. Sorry about that. Okay, right, until they're bar bat mitzvah. But in any case, the mitzvot are a collective endeavor and mission of the Jewish people. But if someone's missing a few mitzvot in their life, it's a deficiency of a certain kind of connectedness. But if someone is not in control of their character traits, right, they can do real damage to themselves, their loved ones, and everyone around them, right? And that really is, that's why they're so important, right? And that's why it's a, huge part of Jewish ethics to be working to elevate, and just aware of that. And right, and the point I wanted to mention is 4 weeks from tonight, we might be, well, I hope we're all in a state of happiness, one way or the other, but 4 weeks from tonight is the holiday of Purim, as you might know. And the events of Purim, I'm sure you know, again, I apologize. I love interactive. The technology just makes it a little harder, but you know that the story of Purim is written in the book of Esther. Well, one beautiful lens through which to look at the book of Esther is to just study the character traits of the people in the book of Esther, the Midot. It's not my own idea. I'm quoting a very great sage in the 20th century who said, among other things, it is a textbook in bad Midot and good Midot. And the bad Midot, of course, drunken Achashverosh, who gets enraged when his wife Vashti doesn't appear before him with no clothes on, right? The book of Esther, I'll just say, says he wanted to appear with her crown on, but the oral tradition says the crown and nothing else. And that's also a good advertisement. Sorry to be so explicit, but to learn Torah with the traditional sources. But anyway, he becomes enraged, and he does away with Vashti because of his rage. And so this great rabbi I'm quoting said, if he had had an anger management class, or if he had been on the Jewish Study Center with Amy and Jerry and all these wonderful people learning that anger is a terrible trait, well, he wouldn't have done away with Vashti. He would just say, okay, take it easy. She's not in the mood to rate herself, whatever. And I could go on, but Haman has everything going in the world for him. Everything. He's been elevated beyond his own belief. If you study the oral tradition, he was from a better background. He married above him, or his wife had a lot to do with his success. Anyone know what his profession was? Someone's, what the Talmud says. By the way, it's not a lowly profession, God forbid. It's a wonderful profession. But what was before he became a hotshot second in command of the king? He was a barber. Okay, and that's not insulting the barbers. They do a wonderful service. But he was quite obscure. Everything's going well. He's second in command. He walks out. He sees one Jew who doesn't bow down to him, and he becomes enraged. And he becomes so enraged, obviously, I think our reason tells us he had a backstory with the Jewish people. You don't try to exterminate a whole people because you're upset with one guy not bowing down to you. But again, the point is his midot were really bad. Okay, and again, it's not a trivial point. Not a trivial point at all. Okay, on the other hand, I'll just say the beautiful care and loyalty of Mordecai and Esther to each other, right? We know Mordecai raised Esther, and she was an orphan. They were cousins, and you see that the care, whatever they keep in touch when she's in the palace. I'm not going to go into it, but it's also a study of very beautiful midot, and obviously the self-sacrifice of Esther, all the wonderful Jewish women in the Jewish Study Center. The book called the Book of Esther, not the Book of Mordecai, and he was a great man, but her heroism and her self-sacrifice really ruled the day. Okay. Pause, questions, that's all introduction. And it took longer than I thought. I wasn't trying to kill time. I just really wanted to set up the idea of character traits. Philip is upset. Okay, I hope not upset. Okay. Not upset. Less. We're going to start learning text of Pirkei Avos. Absolutely. Okay. So we're going to start right now with one. But I also wanted to respond to that point. In 4 seconds, there's no point. We're not going to try to cover a lot of Pirkei Avot. I mean, it's 5 chapters long, and it's a lot of different things. And Torah has to be looked deeply, and not just So tonight we'll cover 3, possibly 4 Mishnahs. It really depends. And I want to start on we're going to warm up our Mishnah muscles before we do a breakout room or whatever like that. We're going to start out our Mishnah muscles. I'm going to share a screen here with something in chapter 1. And that is, last week we talked about one of the sayings of the great rabbi called Hillel, and he had a counterpart, an ideological or adversary, although they were friends, but they disagreed about a lot of ways of interpreting Jewish named Shammai. I'm going to look at a statement of Shammai, one of the great sages of the 1st century BCE, and we'll read it together as a group. I hope you can share see the screen. I'm going to share in 1 second right here. Hope you can share that. You can see that screen. Yes, I trust. And and it says, Shammai used to say, I'll read it in Hebrew, not because I expect you to read it in Hebrew, or understand Hebrew, but it's right in front of us. It's good for those who know. Shammai Omer. Actually, it says Shammai says. It's in the present tense.
Rabbi,
but all
could you make it a little bigger, maybe?
Okay, thank you. Is it better now? A
little bit.
Now?
That's good.
That's a good sign.
Okay. Shammai says, and it means he used to say, he said a lot of things, but in his life, this was one of his mottos, ethically speaking. Shammai Omer, Aseh Toratacha Keva. I'm going to translate literally. Make your Torah fixed. Emor ma'at va'aseh harbe. Say little and do much. Vehevei makabel et kol ha'adam b'sever panim yafot. And receive every person. I don't like the translation of Safaria. Adam is not a man, it's a person. And receive every person b'sever panim yafot, with a pleasant expression, or with a literally thoughtful, nice face. Shammai used to say, make your Torah fixed, speak little but do much, and receive all people with a thoughtful, pleasant face. Now, why did I pick this? Well, you know what? Before I say anything, I picked it first. Among ourselves as a big group. Comment, speak up, write something. And I might just say here, okay, I'm not trying to dominate, but I'll say, like, what's the great wisdom here? Is there great wisdom here? And you say, well, Rabbi, it doesn't have to be great wisdom. It's just Rabbi saying things. No. Rabbi would not have written down anything in the Mishnah if it was just like, brush your teeth every day, your bed. There's something here that was meant to be for us for all time. Aha. So Amy has a beautiful thing. Aha. Okay, Aaron. Good. I'm looking at the comments. Okay, we'll try to deal with them. Wow. Well, okay. I already see now. This is a great group, what I love, but I'm not. Don't be offended. I'm not going to be able to answer everyone, obviously. But okay. Okay, good. So I see Matthew. I see many people mention. Amy started us off. And I see beautifully many. Beautiful. I see many people. Actually, yeah. I have ways I want to frame it, and with your help. But I see Diane, beauty, humility, and kindness. Well, beautifully. I guess you see kindness in the friendly way of greeting someone. Absolutely. What about humility, Diane, or anybody else? And I'm glad you're trying to tie this to traits, because even if the rabbis in Pirkei Avos are giving directives of behavior, like I said, it's all about the midot, really. So where's the humility over here, though? Anyone want to speak up or write? I think it's a beautiful idea. I'm just trying to. Aha, Amy, fantastic, fantastic. Say little, beautiful, right? You're not announcing, right? We're not announcing, or big promises, no action. Big words, no action. Now, again, that can be insecurity. It doesn't have to be just arrogance, a stark way, but right, someone who promises too much and doesn't deliver. So beautiful. That is absolutely right. Few words, well chosen, and then magnified by real action. Beautiful. Excellent. I think the first one is also humility too. When I say first one, I mean there are three parts to a statement. A, B. Making your Torah fixed. And that's a little ambiguous in the language. Yes, exactly. Oh, exactly right, Matthew. Absolutely. Receiving everyone. Oh, thank you. Beautiful. Thank you. Excellent. Beautiful. Right. A friendly countenance is not just friendliness. In fact, it has to be coupled with humility, because there are oftentimes when, I don't know, sometimes those people in a friendly way are not people that we even get along with necessarily, or they might be abrasive, and we have to kind of not get, subdue our own ego to greet them in a friendly way. Beautiful. So I'd say both of them, could be all of them, are humility and kindness. But stick on humility for a second, right? The first bit of his wisdom, Asay Toratcha Keven. Yes, make your Torah fixed. And again, I love all your comments. They're all incredibly beautiful. I see someone, Matthew, talk about a fixed schedule, which we're going to talk about it very much in a second. But let's just say the language first is a little bit, okay, so I'm sorry. I would say Shelley's making a great point. I'll just point out that Shelley in the chat, whenever you're studying Pirkei Avos, thank you, and I'm glad Shelley awakened me this to remind me to say this. Each one of the segments of the statement, A, B, and C, have what to teach us, of course. But again, these are great sages, right? There's not Rabbi E over here. These are great sages. They're not, I'm a bit ADD. I say this, I say that, I say this all over the place, right? Hillel and Shammai, if they say A, they say B, they say C, there's some inner coherence between the three. I mean, not every commentary will bring that out, but a lot of great ones do. What's the connection between those three statements? So Shelley is mentioning that over here. We'll come back to that, but let's pick it up one at a time. Just to define the terms. Okay, make your Torah fixed. Kev means steady or fixed, kavua, as opposed to awry, random, or. And I saw Matthew, I think, has been a very good point. The simple understanding, Shammai doesn't say the word study, doesn't say make your Torah study time fixed, though that is the connotation that most of the commentators understand. That's what he means, although we'll see a different understanding in a second. So let's go with that, as Matthew said. It's very helpful, as Matthew said, to have fixed time. And he mentions habit, the habit of taking a fixed time. You'll notice, and this is something I'll bring out in a second, Shammai doesn't say anything in quantity. He doesn't say study 10 hours a day and never stop studying Torah. He says, make your study, make your Torah study fixed. So what does that mean? Every Thursday, I study from 8 to 8:10 with Amy. You said, Rabbi, that's what Shammai meant. Sounds like what Shammai meant. in your life, you might be so busy that you have 10 minutes a week, but it's a fixed time, 8 to 8:10. Beautiful. That says beautifully. Absolutely. Yes, definitely fixity or consistency, stability is absolutely developing good habits. Absolutely true. Means make a commitment. Good. Aaron also says, so right. Okay, good. Right. So I was just pointing out there's no quantity here. There's the idea of a fixed time. What does that reflect? That reflects, Aaron says, a commitment. Torah is very important to me. Why? I'm a very busy person. I'm the CEO of Amazon. No, I'm not. And he's not doing it. Okay. I wish I were some. No, okay. I like what I do. But I'm the CEO of a big company. I don't have time. But my 15 minutes learning with Rachel or with Vivian, or no one interrupts me during those 15 minutes. They're fixed. They're in my schedule. My secretary knows not to interrupt me. That shows, like Aaron correctly said, well, like I said, order and a commitment to the importance of Torah and a discipline. Absolutely. Exactly right. Beautiful. And so, and you know what? I'm going to say even humility. Because, and you're listening to someone who's not so consistent, that I'm confession to my dear Jewish friend, that's a trait that's not one of my strong traits. I work on it. I know it's a lack, but I mean, and thank God I have a consistent job, but like, following through and like, but that is a sign of humility too, really, because it's saying the Torah is so important, even though I have a lot of other things going on, and anything like the Torah, Shama, the Torah study, right? It's going to be the fixed point in my schedule, and I'll have to submit myself to everything else around it. So, and I just want to comment on that because also, and I apologize again, I know in a group of 30 or 35 wonderful Jewish people might not like the style I'm doing, and I apologize. I can only do what I can do because part of my goal in this class is not just, like I said, to analyze a bunch of different things together with you. It's to just bring out this important point, the midot of Pirkei Avos. Hopefully you'll study till 120 this tractate with great commentaries, and I'm always available literally 24/6 to help you do advice or whatever. But I live in a synagogue. Well, many of you know, Daf Yomi. It's become extremely popular all over the world, not just in the more traditional communities now. Daf Yomi is a page of Talmud a day. Raise your hand if you're not consistent enough to do it. Rabbi E raises his hand. But over the world, men are doing Daf Yomi. Well, that's Aseh Torat Chakava, if there ever was one. That's what Shammai said thousands of years before Meir Shapiro, great rabbi in the 20th century, and thought of the idea, great Polish rabbi. But in any case, that's one of the beautiful things about Daf Yomi. It's a commitment. But so is 5 minutes every Thursday to learn with your son or daughter. I mean, again, so Shammai's not talking about quantity. And listen to this. And I'm launching into let me go with my little momentum, and then we can pause and hear your part of it. But I want to make this what I think is one of the beautiful themes of this Mishnah, and why I chose it, because on the surface it seems kind of like could be underwhelming, but it's incredible because it's not about quantity. I would even say it's about the first step of things. I think you'd almost say Shammai's setting the first step of Torah, of interpersonal relationships, and of, I don't know, your work in your life. Not the totality, and Shammai would say, if you can study 20 hours of Torah a day, that's great. But make your Torah study fixed. Say little and do much. You might not be able to do a lot, but don't be one of those people, we all fall into it, where your words are outstripping your actions. So again, you see, he's not saying do extraordinary numbers of great things. It's just in that proportion of speech and action, actions speak louder than words, like someone said. And true strength or depth of character, we could say, is right. In other words, someone can, make huge promises and even come through a lot of them, but not a great track record. And they're doing a lot of benevolence in the world. But remember, by the way, also it's fascinating. Of course, these rabbis' wisdom does connect with their personality when you learn about them. Shammai was very orderly, and Hillel was, very orderly too. But Hillel was known for his compassion. If someone said compassion, Shammai was on an outward sense, more sharp and more like the trait called gevura, more like stern. But so anyway, but it just, I think again, so it's the first step maybe in your life endeavor. Don't promise too much. Deliver more than you promise. Humility as well. And then the third one I love. Who's going to ever say that the totality of our relationship with our fellow human being is a friendly faith? But it's a start. And also, that makes sense. So I think, again, my way, my Rabbi E way, just tying them together. It's the incredible first step in these endeavors. And it's so important. It's you know, it seems small, but it's not small at all. It sets the context for everything. And by the way, another theme in Judaism and Jewish ethics is that small acts are how we build our character, right? Once a year benevolence, it's fun, but I don't know. But Rambam Maimonides says, no, generosity is built on many individual acts of charity and kindness, not once a year. So I think Shammai is giving us that order, discipline, consistency, small in scope, but powerful in effect. And let's also just say one thing. Well, you can. I want to see. I want to. I don't see everyone's face, but I'll act it out with you. Okay, they're small steps and they're really pretty easily implemented, right, Rabbi? No way. You kidding? We live in a time nowadays. Think about, and I know because I'm busy like you're all busy. Cell phone, like you all have cell phones. I have a cell phone. I have a smartphone. Even I'm not so smart to have a smartphone, but I have a smartphone. The pressure, the difficulty of making your Torah study fixed or anything fixed, making your dinner with your spouse or a good friend fixed. I mean, like the whole concept is like we have to fight against modern society. So I would say back in the day, it was hard. You know, life has always had its challenges, but it's extra hard now to be consistent about something important because we get distracted by a million things. Literally, and just in a silly way. I mean, like, if I or you or anyone says, wow, I love this teaching of Shammai. Well, let me just tell you, though, don't have your cell phone with you in your 10 minutes of Torah study. Do not have it with you, or it won't be fixed. I mean, you know, I'm going to say so very hard. Say little and do much. Hard. Why? And not just because not because we're narcissistic people. We want to help people. We want to be good people. We want to be benevolent. But even Shammai saying, beware, like, you know, you're ultimately not doing your character a service or anyone a service by making big promises and not keeping them. So like, and you might remember, anyone remember, let me ask you, sorry for talking so much. All the commentators on this Mishnah point out when it says, say little and do much, a very famous, I'm sure there are many, but one, a famous scene from the book of Genesis. Anyone know that? Or does anything come to mind from the Torah itself? We see one of our holy ancestors saying little and doing much. Okay, so I'll just say, very famously, in the portion called Vayera, where, yes, very good, thank you, Aaron Boxer. Exactly, right? Avram says, first of all, a remarkable scene. Avram, third day after circumcision, 99 years old. Okay, or sorry, 99 years old. Third day after circumcision. Kindful, he's on the older side. It's very hot outside. He's waiting at the entrance of his tent to find guests to bring in. Kindness and humility to them, right? And three angels looking like human beings come by, and he leaps forward, running. The Torah says over and over, he ran, and he bowed down, he said, please come in, don't pass by, please, I will fetch you a morsel of bread and you'll satisfy yourself, you can go on. And he cooks them a 10-course meal, or whatever it is. Yes, tongue and mustard. Okay, we don't have to go in the deep. The commentaries mention, and other examples we could see, I think, certainly in the matriarchs, that their actions were greater and louder and more, you know, than their words and their promises. Any other comments about that? So yeah, that's the end of that Mishnah. I think I love that Mishnah. I love it because it's like it's deceptively simple to me. Yeah. I love it, Matthew. Very funny. Yes. I agree with you. I agree with you, Sean. I would. And that's a great point. That's a very good point. Thanks for mentioning that. By the way, I love this give and take. I really do. That's a good point because I can't speak for Shammai, but I can't speak for other, I've known different rabbis in life. I mean, the privilege of meeting rabbis I consider and people, great people, not as many as I would like, and you're all great people too. But I've read a lot of stories, biographies of great rabbis, whatever. And, by and large, and I can think of an example I'll give, when it came to Tzarchei Tzibor, communal affairs, it didn't matter. Their Torah study was broken for that. In other words, I mean, there are stories of people who, whatever. I mean, and I know that very famously in the 20th century of Moshe Feinstein, great halakhic authority, diminutive in size, but a giant in genius, lived on the Lower East Side, died in the 1980s. It was well known that his phone would ring all the time. And even people who were not asking, world-class halachic difficulties had a generous ear in Rav Moshe whenever. So it was well known. His wife didn't want him to answer all the time, but he was well known for yes, beautiful. Hillel, absolutely. Hillel was famous for that kind of humility that I think Rav Moshe Feinstein, though I never met him, had. But it doesn't mean beautiful. Any other comments, any other insights about Shammai's point? Look at me. I forgot the third part of the Mishnah. There must be some Freudian slip there. Is it easy to greet everyone with a friendly face? I'll make an unfriendly face to say no. Everyone. Even the people again, I'm not talking about your enemy, I'm not talking about bad people, evil people, but you're tired. You have somewhere to go. Someone is a nudnik, which is a lot of us use. I'm probably a nudnik. My students, I'm a nudnik. Shammai, that takes gevura. That takes strength of character and not phony face. Not phony face. We're not talking. I mean, that's an interesting discussion. I mean, because Shammai is saying the external, a friendly countenance. And later in Pirkei Avos, we'll have other rabbis talk about greeting someone besimcha and with joy itself. But Shammai is not he's not a phony man. He really means, and I'll tell you, I'm not going to say the name, but a great rabbi I was privileged to know a little bit. Great rabbi, lived in Brooklyn, died about 20 years ago. I heard him say this in a lecture, either live or on tape, whatever. He studied this Mishnah as a yeshiva bacher. He was American. He studied in Lithuania before the World War II in the 20s. And he said, I'm just quoting what he said. He said, I worked 2.5 years on myself to try to master the trait of besaver panim yafos, greeting everybody with a friendly countenance. I'm just quoting what he said. I haven't worked that hard, and that's why if you pass me in the day when I'm in a bad mood, I might not give you a friendly expression, but I hope I will. So all those things are hard, but they're worth it. They're beautiful. Comment, questions, or we'll move on to another Mishnah. And again, obviously, this is later in Pirkei Avos. This says the learning is not the main thing; it's the doing. And I'm not. So I challenge myself and everyone: live with this thought and make it part of our lives as much as we can. Fantastic. Thank you, Aaron. Absolutely. Shammai said, what Shammai said, right? Aaron's mentioning true. The great Jewish ethical masters say, right, it's not, sometimes even if we're not feeling it, we should mirror it because that can lead to the feeling. And so we all know if you're feeling bored, sit up straight in your chair. And look alive, and you might actually feel alive. So yes, the external fix the internal. Musser is about that too, absolutely. Can you receive everyone with a pleasant face while wearing a mask? Thank you, Shelley. No, tell Dr. Fauci that, okay? Fake it till you make it, exactly. Yes, I agree, Amy. Yes, all your comments are wonderful. I do want to say one quick thing about that, because Carol said beautifully, fake it till you make it. And it's true, and I've used that in my life. I'm sure we all have. No one, I don't think, neither a behavioral psychologist nor a great sage in our tradition would say, make that the modus operandi. I mean, it's not. You can't, you have to build real internal values and joy. But on the outside, it certainly is it helps. It helps. Beautiful. Okay. Okay, amazing. So That even went longer than I was very happy. I thought it was a beautiful insight. I'm glad I shared the video. Now, let's, let me introduce what we're going to do in the breakout rooms. When you smile, even your eyes light up. You mean me or everybody? Everybody. That's right. It's totally true. Oh, by the way, you know that, right? The fake it till you make it. I did a podcast about this a few weeks ago, a short little thing, but like it's known. But now they have the science to prove it. Go like this. Make a fake smile, and the dopamine begins to be released or whatever like that. On some level, it has an effect. Okay. Now, the new breakout rooms. Okay. Let me introduce very quickly. I think it'll be interesting, and we'll see how it goes. Bye, Shelly. Thank you so much for coming. Shelly's an old dear friend, also a great Jewish educator. Not also a great Jewish educator. Last week, we talked about a very famous Mishna at the beginning of Pirkei Avos, early in chapter 1. On 3 things the world stands. Shimon, and you'll see it in the chat room, you'll have it in front of you. But it's Shimon, you know what? No, let me share the screen now, and then we'll also share the screen when you go into your chat rooms. Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second, I'm coming. Okay. Thank you for being with me. Okay. Okay. We're just going to look together, recap this one, and then in your chat rooms, you're going to look at the first one combined with 2 other ones. They're Mishnas from Pirkei Avos. But the first one says, I'm sorry, hope you can read it. And we did this last week. It says, Shimon HaTzadik, Shimon the righteous, was among the last members of the Great Assembly. And the Great Assembly was at the beginning of the Second Temple period. They made they wrote a lot of the prayers we say. They kind of formalized a lot of law to make the Jewish people coherent again after the first exile. So anyway, Shimon HaTzadik used to say, the world stands upon 3 things: on the Torah, on the service, which usually understood to mean service of God, and on deeds of loving kindness. Al HaTorah, Al HaAvodah, Ve'al Gemilut Chasadim. And we talked about that last time. I don't want to necessarily go through it again, but how all aspects of our lives and our relationships are kind of covered in Shimon's statement that the world itself, and we talked a little bit about the world at large and each one of us individually, because each one of us is a world, stands upon these 3, if you will, spiritual pillars: the Torah, service of God, deeds of loving kindness. And I'll just mention one, and one other point: service of God, we talked about, also has a certain connection to prayer, particularly because prayer in the Torah is called avodah shebalev, service of God. Anyway, makes sense. So what I want you to do in the breakout rooms, though, is 2 other times, there are really 3, but I left out 1. 2 other times in Pirkei Avot, later sages say that exact same a similar expression, but in the negative. They mention 3 things that remove a person from the world. Shimon HaTzadik said the world stands upon 3 things, and these other sages, Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Elazar HaKapar, say that certain traits remove a person from the world. So I want you, I guess, in breakout rooms to, on their own, the second 2 of the statements, talk about them, but then try to compare and contrast. Like, I would say they really all are saying the same thing. They are in different ways, and try to see each one's doing in kind of an ABC. So I don't mean it exactly in a neat way, but how do they reflect upon each other? How are they different manifestations of, or rather the negative expression of what Rav Shimon HaTzadik is saying? Does that make sense, more or less? I hope. Jared? Compare and contrast them. You know what? If you were like, Rabbi E, what are you talking about? It's okay. Just see how they spark off each other, because they're really very similar in either the positive side or the negative side. Make sense, Amy? I'm looking to my old friend to save me over here. No, because I guess you're going to put it in breakout rooms. Oh yeah. Oh, good. Okay. People are being put in breakout rooms, right? But I want to make.
In our room, we talked about how there's kind of a correspondence between Shimon the Righteous's list and the list of Rabbi Yehoshua. They kind of line up like opposites. So the Torah kind of restrains the evil inclination and gives us a way to walk. Hatred of other people is pretty obviously an opposite of doing deeds of loving kindness. And
right.
That sort of left, the only one left was the evil eye as the opposite of communal worship. But I actually, we talked about how in a way they're all related, because what happens with the bad list is that these things remove the person from the community.
Aha, beautiful. Fantastic point. Right. So you're, first of all, defining Matthew, right. Right. Some of the, obviously each of these terms needs to be understood. Remove a person from the world, but wait, does it mean literally the world? You were understanding like the community, and that's a good way of understanding it. Very good, beautiful. Now, right, maybe okay, anybody else?
I couldn't understand the correspondence between the second chapter and the first chapter on the first two pillars, the Torah and Avodah.
Okay.
I couldn't see anything correlating to those two pillars. Gemilut Chasadim, I could.
Okay.
So I am
good, right.
At a loss.
No, okay, good, thank you. No, and by the way, I never said, maybe I meant it, it didn't have to be necessarily ABC, ABC. It could be, the Pirkei Avos are in, I guess, triads are called threes. That's not random why that is, but like, so a lot of the times you can find, but truthfully, they all interact with each other, as we'll see. But okay, I'm sorry that was confusing. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Vivian. I was with Shlomo and Jerry in room 1, and unlike, I guess, all the rest of you, I don't think that the negative is directly opposite the positive one.
Okay.
Okay. The
Okay,
negative.
but you know what? I should have said actually. I hope I did. Right. I sound like most people, as I gave you instructions, were just lining everything up. But in and of itself, Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Lazar Kappa are saying very profound teachings. Obviously, like each one in their own way, and maybe it's the same thing in a way. They're related. We'll talk about that. But the three things Rabbi says and Rabbi Lazar says: remove a person from the world. I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better checklist of the most negative traits we have that really do destroy ourselves and others.
But it seems to me that Shimon the Righteous
was different.
Was asking us to go much bigger and broader than just not the negative things.
Fantastic point. Yes, absolutely right. Beautiful.
So I don't think that they're just one's purely the negative of the other.
Okay, so we'll talk about that for a second, I hope. Good point. Very good point. Yes, certainly one was the more right. Just stop me if you want. If anyone wants to say anything, I'd rather have you talk than me talk, but I can just define a few things here or help us define things. Again, I think you're smart and you understood it, but evil eye, ayin hara. Now, that has a number of meanings, and you might have even heard like an ayin hara, right? But it doesn't necessarily, and that has a certain spiritual, mystical idea. It's a real concept. It's not our topic now, but I should have actually said that. Meaning, like the more down to earth explanation or understanding of this phrase, ayin hara, means I look unfavorably on other people's successes. I'm jealous of them. It's really like jealousy, and a narrow vision. As opposed to an ayin tova. Opposite is an ayin tova. An ayin tova sees the good in other things. I'm happy when my friend is successful. But the person who has the ayin hara, him or herself, is looking at a constricted lens unfavorably at what they have, what others have. So that's kind of that's a good way to describe ayin hara. Yetzer hara, many of you probably have heard of, maybe not everyone, but that's a very, very famous phrase that goes all the way back to the Torah, but it's all over the ethics and the Talmud. And it's often translated evil inclination. Yetzer doesn't really mean inclination; it means more of a creative force within us. But basically, the id. Okay, I mean, if you know Freudian stuff, I mean, whatever. The id, sort of like the unbridled desire for immediate sensual gratification that, I mean, roughly speaking, often especially associated with lust, but not only lust, is what the Yetzer Hara means. By the way, don't be discouraged. We have a Yetzer Hatov. We have a corresponding, a rather opposite, yearning for completion, yearning for self-actualization. The Yetzer Hara is kind of the enemy of all that, or rather, the Yetzer Tov is forward-looking. The Yetzer Tov wants to catch the good inclination, the bad inclination. That's a very big part of Torah psychology, and it's very profound. I mean, more than it sounds, whatever, but anyway, that's what it means. So, and just if you look at number 2 and number 3, meaning Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Lazar, they really line up very well in a sense, meaning jealousy is connected to an evil eye. It's almost a synonym for it, really. I mean, again, it's not the only way to understand, but kina, someone who feels jealousy, we all do, by the way. Cain felt it. It goes back in human history, and I suffer from it too, like we all do to some extent. But that really is associated very much. It's almost like it's kind of the trait that manifests itself with this thing called ayin hara. And lust, ta'ava, or taiva, to talk Ashkenazic, is almost a synonym for the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is not only taiva, but it often is expressed. It's most right. What's the most powerful, sensual, primal urge we have?
Yetzer Hara.
What's that?
Yetzer Hara. Yetzer
Hara. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And honor-seeking, kavod, is what. Now, by the way, the word kavod is first of all, the word ta'ava is not only a negative word. It can be used just to desire, but in this case, it means excessive desire, right? Or destructive desire. And the word kavod is one of those beautiful words in all of Lashon Kodesh, in all of Hebrew. Honor. It's also a synonym for the soul in the Psalms of King David. And that makes sense, because what's the most honorable, so to speak, part of us? Our deepest essence, the soul. But here it means like running after kavod, wanting people desperately to give me. That's the implication there. And that really is one of the most profound ways that we come to hate each other, because I come to see you as like not giving me the proper kavod that I want, or you in my mind stand in the way of me getting the kavod that I should have, et cetera, et cetera. So those two line up in a way. Again, there are other ways of doing it. Remove a person from the world. I know before we start in a couple minutes, but I'll try to tie it back for Vivian's sake and others, and the other gentleman, wonderful, to go back to Shimon and righteous. But did anyone have any? I think it was his name Matthew, who said remove a person from the world means like kind of from society, and that's a good way of understanding. All these things are
community.
That's in the
community. I'm sorry, community, right? Community, right? Absolutely. Do we have any literalists here? Any literalists in the audience? Because many commentators, including Rambam, say, Maimonides, it's literal. If someone is consumed with an ayin hara or a yetzer hara, or they're thoroughly misanthropic, they often will leave this world early. And I don't say that. The Rambam was a doctor, and back in his day, he knew that negative emotions, he might not have had the data to back it up with the narrowing of the arteries, but these are things that hurt yourself. They can lead unbridled lust, obsessive hatred of others. They can all just, make someone's life shorter in this world. So when we jump to the metaphor, which is good, and we should, it doesn't mean the literal doesn't have a meaning as well. But also I would say, beautiful, someone said, we just said now physical existence itself, but also in a way, how can I say it, from your own inner balance and centeredness. I know that sounds very 21st century, right? But it's really true. In other words, like, remember, throughout the Torah, a person is considered an olam tam, or the Talmud says that. I mean, every one of us is a world unto ourselves, he or she, whatever. We're all like, and we're as precious as the whole world, each one of us. Bishvili nivra ha'olam, the Talmud says. Everyone, Jew, Gentile, should say, for my sake, this whole world was created. Wow, that sounds horribly egotistical, but no, everyone should say that, and you have to respect everyone as equally as special as you. But in any case, so another way, I think, just in a kind of, yes, it removes us from community. Yes, it can end your life early, God forbid, if you can't control these things. But it also just takes you away from reality, from your own inner reality. Because this gets really deeper. Because the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is not real. It's a figment of the imagination. By the way, God put it there, but meaning it's not real. The Yetzer Hara feeds like whatever. It's meaning like it's your true grounded reality, your wholesome sense of self. You remove yourself from it when you're in the realm of Ayin Hara, because Ayin Hara also separates you from other people. As someone said, God made us people to be connected with others. Yes, every individual is important in Judaism. Last week we saw Judaism doesn't say either individual or community. Both are important, but you're certainly not an island unto yourself. And an Ayin Hara separates you from others. And so that just, we're meant to be interacting with each other. And the evil inclination also separates you from others. If I'm pursuing my lust, and we can think of people who met very ugly ends, whatever, whatever, in the news, not every week, but, people who, can do obviously awful things and cruel things just to satisfy their desire. And that takes you away from community or friendship or true, fellow feeling. And obviously hatred of other people does too. So in other words, world can mean this world, it can mean community, it can also mean your own inner true reality as a holy creation of God. And let's just finish with here's what I think. And you can really play it many ways. Most of you saw that obviously hatred of other people is the direct opposite of loving kindness, for sure. And by the way, it goes both ways. Just like whoever it was before said, fake it till you make it. You have to wait till you're full of love in your heart 100% to do kindness for others. Doing kindness helps rid your heart of negative feelings to people. So the behavioral aspect works, both ways, meaning giving leads to love, love leads to giving, and so on. So, but here's one to think about, and that is that Torah, service of God, or prayer. Remember I said service of God, avoda, also can mean prayer, a special connection to that. So, if someone studies Torah deeply, and I don't claim that I do really, probably as I should, but I think it brings you to a sense of inner harmony. Again, not Torah disembodied from goodness and everything else, but Torah is very deep. It affects you in a very, right? It's called a healing. It's a medicine. There are all these metaphors for it. And I think, and I know in my own experience that, and we see, by the way, in the Torah itself, I don't know if you remember, famous scene, the Jews are wandering after they left Egypt, and they go 3 days and there's no water. It's when they cry for water. And God tells Moshe to throw a stick into the waters, a body of water, oasis, I don't know, whatever. And the waters were bitter there, and the stick turned the waters sweet. Okay, and then of course they drank and they were fine. So, but in any case, that stick that turned the bitter waters to sweetness is also a metaphor for the Torah and Torah laws. By the way, even in real time, the rabbis say Moshe taught, even though they hadn't gotten the 10 Commandments yet, Moshe taught some of the laws that God had told him to them, because, in other words, their bitterness of spirit was partly because they were thirsty and partly because they needed some. Jews have active minds. We wanted wisdom to talk about. So my point is, Torah, as it says in King David's Psalms, Meshivas Nafesh, Torah Meshivas Nafesh, Torah Tamima Meshivas Nafesh, right? The Torah wisdom is whole. It restores the soul. It brings a person, peace of mind. But again, I don't live it like I should, and I'm a rabbi, right? But I'm just saying, I've heard many stories. Great rabbis used to say to their students, you're feeling very worried, you're feeling very anxious, study a page of Talmud. You're feeling very anxious, 2 pages of Talmud. And they didn't mean that because it calms you. Obviously truthfully, doing a crossword puzzle is good if you're anxious, anything to get your mind off it. But Torah settles your mind. So my point is, what's an ayin hara? An ayin hara means I'm dissatisfied with myself, ultimately. I just, because really we all have what we need in this world. That's a big Jewish teaching. And if someone has physical possessions, that's what they're supposed to have. And that's another topic. But Torah can restore that equilibrium of peace with oneself. So I think in that way, it might not sit with you perfectly, but I think that, you have less of an evil eye if you're really exerting yourself, each one on one's own level, in studying the Torah. It has that magic, not magic, but spiritual effect on someone. And then service of God, let's call, sorry, comment?
Rabbi E, Matthew has his hand up.
Oh, okay, I don't see. I apologize. I was looking at the thing, and then we'll I know it's very late. We'll
No, go.
stop in a second. Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. Whatever. My screen was acting a little weird, so I just have the text in front of me. Okay.
He's got the hand up.
Matthew, yeah, you want to go?
Oh, I just wanted to say that you reminded me of something I read about the person who studies with the wrong motivation. Eventually, study of Torah will bring him to have the right motivation.
You're breaking up, Matthew. Say it one more time. I apologize. It broke up. I couldn't hear.
It reminds me of something I read.
Can anyone help me, or it's write it in the chat?
I'll do that.
I only hear part of it. I'm sorry. That's when you want technology to help bringing us down over here. Matthew, I'm looking. I'll wait to hear what you say or whatever. But I saw someone respond in the chat quickly, and my computer's not acting like it should. But someone said beautifully, Matthew, I'm waiting for your point. Right? That something like experiences here. Eve said, "I'm sorry, my computer with the chat is because it's not scrolling well, so it keeps going back up when I want it to go down." So someone said about Adam and Eve. Yes, well, the snake is the embodiment of the Yetzer Hara, or the physical representation of that force. And in fact, in the deeper source, it says the snake was the external expression of what then became an internal force. We'll try again. By the way, I have a better computer because I broke my computer, and this is just a temporary Chromebook, which, okay. Yes, beautiful, fantastic, Matthew. Matthew made an excellent point. The Talmud famously says, don't wait for 100% to study Torah or do good deeds. You should be osik Torah mitzvot, afilu lo lishma, even if it's not for the perfectly altruistic, beautiful, noble reason, because the elevating effect of good deeds, Torah, kindness, will bring you to a better intention. And that's a very beautiful point. Now, I will tell you, the commentaries say you have to want to get to that better intention. Meaning, someone could be such a bad apple that they're not going to let the magic power of the Torah and the good deeds. But as long as you want to, you're aware that I'm studying Torah, partly people say, oh, you're so smart, or you know a lot, or whatever the motivation is. As long as you want to elevate motivation, you'll get to that, the rabbi says. So do not, in other words, wait to cross the blind person across the street, because part of you know you get your picture in the paper. If they still do that, still cross the blind person across the street, do a good deed. A very good point, Matthew. Yes. And yes, Carol, like I said, snake is like the Yetzer Hara. Aaron doesn't like the translation of evil inclination as a bad translation.
I'm gonna mute everyone right now.
We'll stop now. But Aaron, what did you say?
Problems. Everybody is.
What's the translation?
I think we're having voice problems with everybody's unmuted. I'm going to mute people. They can unmute themselves.
What's that? I didn't hear you.
Rachel, how do we?
We're having a lot of technical difficulties on my end. Hey, what's so funny?
Mute everybody.
I think the intro got us all here. I don't know. Okay, I guess we should talk about that. I found it very interesting. Comments wonderful. Someone asked the evil eye, Deborah. I don't know if we answered that at all. I mean, again, there's a mystical concept of evil eye. And what's that? I'm sorry. Look this way. Okay, so again, it's on page 8. The evil eye. It's a Kabbalistic concept, really, but like, I mean, whatever, that judging someone harshly, looking at someone negatively, can have an effect, a deleterious effect on that person. That's the idea of an evil. I mean, I can't. It's a different topic. Someone can say. I mean, someone can say, "Well, I don't understand that. I don't believe it." But there's more to it than just like an old wives' tale. There's something to it. You know what? Just like the more about human beings in our brain, the more we know, we send out energy. Nothing is lost. Nothing is lost. It's an old idea before physicists, right? Nothing's lost. So like a negative thought can have an effect somewhere out there. And the evil eye, I can't go into because I don't understand. But like, it's just so, in other words, we have to work ourselves, myself included. You know, not only is it not a good thing to have like negative thoughts about, again, they pop up, those kind of things, but like dwell on your dislike of something, of someone. The evil eye concept in a mystical sense could have, why it could have some bad effect on someone, I don't know. I mean, that's for another time. But I was trying to explain, Deborah, that you don't have to understand that point, because I and hara can just mean a narrow vision of someone. So in our here, I think you understood, you're not going to live a very communal or centered life if you're always focusing, and I'm not saying I'm any better sometimes, on what I don't have and what they have. And I look at everyone's success like it's coming at my expense. That's an evil eye, not the mystical effect on them, but it makes your own life, it removes from the world, in other words. Okay. Boxer, yes, absolutely. We can talk about that another time. Yes, the Yetzer Hara. No. The Talmud says they tried to, whatever. The rabbis would have tried to abolish the Yetzer Hara. They wouldn't have had children. They wouldn't have gone to work. So the Yetzer Hara, good. Thank you. Right, it wasn't our topic tonight, but the Yetzer Hara is okay. The Yetzer Hara needs to be channeled. It needs to be brought. The Torah says, let's end with this. The rabbi said, you probably know this, Aaron, because you know quite a lot, obviously. The rabbis say the following: God said, I created the Yetzer Hara. I created the medicine for it. And that's the Torah, meaning it won't destroy it. If you destroy it, you're not going to get out of bed. You'll have no ego, because we need some ego to want to, put one foot in front of the other. But it'll Tavlin, actually, the word is a spice. Actually, the Torah can elevate the Yetzer Hara. It can wrangle it into service to serve God. Love God with all your heart. That means with your Yetzer Tov and your Yetzer Hara. So yes, I know that story in the Talmud, I should look at, but no, we're not completely destroy our Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is something to be sweetened, to be elevated with the help of the Torah and its guidelines. Absolutely. I mean, very good point. Very, very good point. And that's why, by the way, I'll say later in Pirkei Avos, we see a teaching about that. And it doesn't say you should destroy. It says you control, subdue, be in control of your Yetzer Hara. That's a hard enough job, but definitely don't destroy it. Okay, everybody, I better let you go or I'll get in trouble. Jerry, you want to enter the meeting?
Okay.
I mean, I love learning.
See you next week.
I don't want to be like the rabbi would leave.
I will get the recording out as soon as.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Please feel free to reach out. Wonderful comments. You're an amazing group.
Bye-bye.
Secure payments, the tools you need, people who can help.